Okay, so thanks everyone and welcome to this lunchtime webinar with Social Farms and Gardens and the Northern Network. So this is all about hearing more about Social Farms and Gardens, what they do and their Green Care Quality Mark award as well, and how you can get involved with that. So we have myself here today from Groundwork and the Northern Network, and then we also have Denise and Sophie from Social Farms and Gardens. Before we get started, I'll just give you a bit of overview of the Northern Network. So we're a new network that's designed to link together green community hubs or green growing spaces, community spaces across the north of England. And part of the reason why we're having the session today is to help support organisations with any training needs and support needs. And we know that many people are working in the field of health and well-being in the green environment nowadays, and we felt that learning more about the Green Care Quality Mark and how you can accredit your site would be really helpful for the work that we're all doing. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Denise and Sophie.
Okay, so if I just let Sophie, we'll be starting the presentation and then I'll go on to a bit more detail about the Green Care Quality Mark.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, partly it's because I can't stay for the whole session, so I'm really sorry, but I'm going to do a little bit and then I will have to leave. But thank you so much for having us today. It's really nice to be part of one of your lunchtime sessions. So I was going to do a little bit of an introduction to who Social Farms and Gardens are. Some of you may know us, some of you may not, and talk a little bit about the background to the Green Care Quality Mark, and then hand over to Denise to sort of get into some of the detail. So we are a UK-wide charity and we've been around for a really long time. So we were founded in 1980 and we come, like our history is that we come from the kind of the city farms movement. So some of the big city farms that are in London, some of which have been around for kind of 50 years, those were some of our initial members. And our main aim is to support communities to farm, garden and grow together. We do lots of things across the organisation. So we do advocacy and try and represent our sector as a whole, get greater recognition, try and improve access to funding. We give lots of advice. As I said, we are a membership organisation, so membership is free. So that's something that people can access. We design and deliver a range of training programmes, both nationally and in different regions. We've got a very, very busy Wales team in particular at the moment, but we do have staff in Northern Ireland, in Scotland, and then our central team is based here in Bristol, although Denise, although she's part of that team, is not in Bristol. Yeah, and then, I mean, there's a little bit about us there. So our patron is currently King Charles and our president is Lord Curry, who's actually been a fantastic advocate of what our members do. If you go on to the next slide, Denise. So I just wanted to kind of put this map up to give you a sense of where our members are, and the answer is everywhere. So I think we are now up to around about almost 3,000 members. And that's a really, really broad church. So membership is free and it's anybody that is doing things that essentially connect kind of people, communities with the land, with nature. And that can be anything from very, very small guerrilla gardening projects or allotment plots, right up to kind of some large care farms, some of the bigger city farms and things like that. And giving you a sense of that breadth of people, I think might help me when I'm explaining kind of where the Green Care Mark came from. Now, as soon as we start talking about community growing, we all know, I'm preaching to the converted very, very much here, that it's really good for people in a lot of different ways. It's good for communities, but it's good for individuals as well. Just taking part has got lots of physical health benefits. It's got lots of mental health benefits. We probably all know that from benefiting from it ourselves, and also, running the types of projects. I ran a community garden for 10 years. I saw it in action. It's a really powerful thing. And The background to the Green Care Quality Mark came through a very long piece of work that was initially started around care farming. There was an organisation called Care Farming UK who merged with us in 2018. So they brought all of those expertise into Social Farms and Gardens and some of their network as well. There was then a very large piece of work that was done over a couple of years, funded through DEFRA, to increase the number of places at care farms that were available. So all of that work kind of looking at what was happening specifically at care farms, one of the big needs that came out of that was sort of saying, well, we're doing this work and what we really need is a way to demonstrate that what we're doing is a really quality service. And so essentially an accreditation was developed that used to be called the Code of Practice for Care Farmers. And over the last couple of years, it's been recognised that actually what we're talking about really when we talk about care farming is what we now call green care. So if I just kind of explain that a little bit, and before I hand over to Denise to say how the kind of accreditation side of things work. When we talk about community growing, and as I said, we all know that it's really good for people, that it's good for people in quite a lot of informal ways. And what green care is, what we mean by that, is when it's delivered for specific therapeutic purposes. So the difference being, if I have my community garden where anybody's welcome and anybody can come through the gate and take part in all the brilliant activities, that's one kind of end of that spectrum. The other end being where we're potentially on the same site, delivering a specific group for people living with dementia, for example, or we're delivering a gardening group for people who have left prison, or specifically for a group of people who've left care. So it's where it's being delivered with specific therapeutic outcomes. And there's a lot of interest, through the social prescribing movement in how amazing green care can be for people. So we're really pleased that green care has been included in the Green Social Prescribing Toolkit that's just been released by the NHS. Denise might touch on that later. And one of the big challenges for people who are delivering these services is demonstrating to the people commission the services to people who are looking to take them out, whether it's for family members or for themselves, is how do I know that actually what I'm going to go to is safe, is a sort of a quality place. And, as you can see from our map there, that map is every single one of those pins is an independent grassroots organisation. And that's fantastic, but that's very, very difficult to have a level of kind of quality standard that you will get from place to place, and that actually makes it quite difficult to commission some of the groups. So that's where the Green Care Quality Mark came from. We, as the sort of national body, developed this set of quality standards that this is what good green care delivery looks like, and it's been out, in various forms for several years, and now we've rebranded it as the Green Care Quality Mark. So Denise, do you want me to see more in terms of the background, or do you want to pick up from that point?
No, that's fine. I can take it from there.
Lovely. All right. Well, I hope that's been a useful introduction on Social Farms and Gardens and who we are and kind of our history. It's a real whistle stop. I appreciate. Yeah, if any of you aren't members, as I said, our membership is free. You're very, very welcome to join. And if you've got questions, do get in touch after the session. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. So the Green Care Quality Mark, as Sophie was just saying there, it has evolved from the previous scheme, which was called the Code of Practice. And so the new scheme was launched in around just over a year ago, in April 22. And what we're trying to do is increase the quality and allow organisations to demonstrate their compliance so that people become aware that this is a set of standards that people should be looking for, commissioners, service users, their families, when they're trying to look for places to put their clients, their family. And it widened from care farming, which, as I said, it was based from, to then have all different sorts of green care providers. So whether or not it's animal assisted therapies, therapeutic gardening, we tried to widen it. So it still does cover care farming, but obviously there's sections in it about animals, etc., which aren't relevant to a number of areas. The other thing the revised system did was move it online. The previous scheme involved filling most of the information out on an Excel spreadsheet. I personally love Excel, but others don't, and found it quite difficult to provide all the information we needed. So it moved to an online portal where people could upload their information, could provide links to the documentation that was required, and it made it a much more streamlined system. As well as part of the Green Care, we do provide lots of other supporting resources. There are, as Sophie mentioned, there are training courses, there are support groups. One of the things that a lot of people, once they're members, there's a private Facebook group. Quite often you see people putting questions in there about, I've got this issue, has anybody else had this issue, and how did they overcome it? It's quite a big support network there. I think there's over 1,000 members in it already, and you can normally find answers to things you want. The fee is currently £60 a year for the enrolment and then continued compliance. This has been £60 for a number of years now, and we have got to move it on to a more sustainable basis. Previously, it's been funded by Social Farm and Gardens reserves, and we're looking to move it to a more sustainable, so we're less reliant on obtaining funding. It looks like it's going to be around £200. We don't know exactly when the new price will come in, but we think it'll be towards the end of this year. So what we definitely are encouraging people is to get in. At the moment, there is no time limit between enrolling and submitting your forms. We may be introducing that at a later stage. So again, it's a case of get your application in, get yourself started while the cost is still low. So a bit more actually about what's available. So what we suggest people do in the first instance is download the framework document. So we launched this at the end of January this year because we were getting feedback to say that the requirements of the Green Care Quality Mark were hidden behind a paywall. So it was very difficult for people to work out whether or not it was for them, how close they were to being able to achieve it. So we launched this framework document, which you can go onto our website and you complete a web form, so we know that whereabouts it's going to, and you can download it. And it's about 5 or 6 pages, and it becomes a checklist, just like it's displayed on this screen here, which mirrors the sort of statements which are in the application form. So people can download it, have a look through, and see what they have already got or where the gaps are. When you get the email back from your web form, it also has a link to a very comprehensive guidance document, which is about 43 pages long, which goes through the support you need to try and complete the application form, and also goes in and to explain a bit more about each of the statements, about what the assessors will be looking for at those for each statement. So if there is an area that you haven't got at the moment, you can look at the guidance and get yourself prepared and get yourself sorted, and have a look at what was required and get those things in place. I mean, the guidance, as I said, 43 pages, but it provides lots of web links to places to get the information or get clarification on what is actually required. So after you've got yourself prepared and you enroll on the Green Care Quality Mark, the enrolment, as I said, is currently £60, and then it allows you access to the application form. Now, the application form can be filled out in multiple sittings. It doesn't have to be done at one go, so you can do some work, save it, and then come back and complete it. But it's broadly, after it's given some information about your organisation, it then is broken down into 3 main areas. So the first area is concentrating on demonstrating that you run a responsible organisation. So this covers areas such as your legal status and your business structure. You know, are you a charity? You can provide a link to the charities page or Companies House, what your accounting procedures are, have you got financial plans in place, what insurances you've got. And insurance becomes one of the mandatory documents that need to be uploaded with the application form. So there are 5 documents overall which are needed, and 2 of them are confirmation of your employer's liability and public liability insurance. So confirmation that you've got them, and information about the level of cover you've got. It goes in to make sure that you've got a system in place to receive feedback and evaluation of your service. How are you looking after the environment? And then if you've got animals, there's a section there that you can talk about animal welfare, animal transportation, animal licensing if it's required, and all the other, you know, do you have isolation facilities for your animals should they be sick? But obviously if you're in an area that hasn't got animals, then obviously you don't need to complete those sections. Then we go on to the second section, which is about people. So showing that you care about the people you work with. And this encompasses staff, volunteers, and the service users. So it looks at what induction you do and what training programs you have. So this is induction of staff, induction of volunteers, as well as what happens when a new service user or a new client comes to your site. What is the process from getting them from their initial interest to them turning up on your site? It also looks at safeguarding, and again, this is another one of the mandatory documents. So there's normally an adult safeguarding policy and then a child protection or child safeguarding policy. And again, these are 2 documents that we ask you to upload or provide us by email. And also, what contracts have you got in place? Have you got employment contracts? Have you got agreements with your volunteers? And what agreements have you got with your service users? So, and that is the 5th document that we ask you to upload, which is your service level agreement. It talks about confidentiality, talks about GDPR compliance, and also about your day-to-day activities. What sort of staff ratios do you work on? Are you able to change your activities? You know, have you got facilities for indoor if there's bad weather? And also how do you look at conflict if multiple groups are using your site? The third area looks about safety. So here it talks about your health and safety policy, and in most cases this is an additional policy that is asked to be uploaded because it is normally one of the comprehensive policies that everybody has. Talks about risk assessments. You do personal risk assessments, activity risk assessments, site risk assessments, fire risk assessments, all of those types of things. What are your first stage procedures, and have you got emergency and contingency plans in place should something happen on your site? It talks about incident reporting, and also things like electrical testing, PAT testing, gas safety testings. What things have you got in place for those items? And also then it talks about PPE. Sometimes this is already part of the health and safety policy, but also what signage. Have you got signage that is suitable, and you know, signage that can be recognised about what's available on your site? So talking about the supporting evidence, after every question statement, you're asked, do a particular question, and then you're asked yes or no. And under each group of questions, you've got facility there to be able to add some supporting evidence. Now, you could decide to choose to include the policy or the procedure document which relates to that item. Insurance certificates, as I mentioned. Sometimes it's copies of forms on copies of contracts. Sometimes, for example, one of the questions in the beginning is, is your mission statement or your purpose clearly in the public domain? Quite often people provide links there to their own websites. And in all of these cases, you could just provide an explanation of how you think that statement is met. By the same token, if you have said no for some reason that you don't meet that, and it could be for a variety of reasons, we ask you to provide an explanation of why in these circumstances you don't think that statement is appropriate to your setting. So really there's sort of like 4 stages to getting it. And as I said, the first thing is to download the framework, and that allows you to prepare, get the documents together, know where they are, make sure you've got electronic copies of these things. Then once you're happy that you meet all the standards and you know the answers that you're going to be, you can apply, and then you pay your enrolment fee and complete your application. Once we've received that, I get notified once you submit your final application. I will then run through as a pre-check, make sure that all the boxes are ticked and all the questions are answered, and might come back to you for some additional information if necessary. And then I send it across to our panel of peer assessors. Once they've provided me with some feedback, then I come back to the organisation and say, these are the recommendations, or these are things you need to do to achieve the award, or these are the recommendations that we look at. Sometimes they provide saying, yes, we're happy with that document at the moment, but we suggest next time it's reviewed, you look at A, B, or C. And sometimes they come back and say everything's perfect, and they issue the award straight away. And again, we can then go and issue the award once the assessors are happy that all the statements have been met and all the answers given. And you get your award for 12 months. So in effect, there are 2 sort of process cycles to the Green Care Quality Mark. One is for your enrolment and membership, which comes up for renewal 12 months from the time of your enrolment. And then when you finally get your award, you'll be asked to confirm your compliance, which is a much shorter confirmation of your information from your previous application on the anniversary of when you get the award. Originally, we were finding it was quite a long delay between people enrolling and submitting their form, and I think this was mainly because they had no ability to prepare. We're now finding it does take probably about 4 months to complete the cycle. So from people downloading the framework, the next month is when they probably actually fill the application, get it to us. If there is some minor amendments and that they need to do before we get the award. But saying that, we have got other people that, I had somebody yesterday that or they didn't bother with the framework document. They are people who had previously done a code of practice, so they enrolled and submitted their application form straight away. I checked it this morning. They'd completed everything on it that they needed to do, so in sort of one day it's already out being reviewed. So, but that just gives you some idea. As I said, the application can be completed in stages. If people can't use Google Links or Dropbox, which is how we suggest you provide the documents, they can email them to me and I'll add them to their file. So here, when we get people who have got the award, we try to do a lot of publicity about it. So there's little sound bites which go out on Twitter or Facebook, depending on what platforms people use. And these are just a couple of the feedbacks for people who've got some of the initial ones about reasons why they wanted to go for it. As I say, we try and include information on our newsletters as well. And at the moment, we've got website maps and things like that showing where these people are. So we're at the stage now, as I said, the framework went out at the end of January. There's over 120 what I call real framework requests. So when you take out staff, when you take out duplicates from an organisation, when you take out students and international requests, we've got about 120 organisations that have requested the framework documents since the end of January. We've got currently 90 organisations enrolled onto the scheme, and of those 46 have already gained the Green Care Quality Mark. As Sophie mentioned at the beginning, we've been waiting for this document to be published for quite some time, but this month the Green Social Prescribing Toolkit has been published, and the framework document, the Green Care Quality Mark, are referenced a couple of times within that document. So again, we are thinking that's going to promote more interest from the social prescribing network and probably the link workers about what is required for green care sites. We are also looking, I mentioned, as I said, about the fee increase. So we are looking at what we can include with the offer of enrolling on the Green Care Quality Mark. So we're looking at training, we're looking at templates for policies that people may not have, and we're looking at repurposing our website so it specifically promotes those that are engaged. So those that are filling out their application forms, that have all submitted their application forms, and for those that have gained the Green Care Quality Mark. We're also looking at a few other things that we can probably try and provide some online training and online sessions to help people once they have it enrolled. So that's the main part of the presentation now. So I will stop sharing and then I'm happy to take any questions that people might have.
I know that,
Oops.
I think there was one question in the chat from Valerie. So Valerie's asked, we aren't employers, but we do have public liability insurance through our local church, which is also our host finance in a restricted fund. Can we still register?
Yes, yes. So whenever you've got anything like that, if you just explain against the question about why you haven't got certain things, then obviously the reviewers look at those circumstances to see, you know, because it's not expected to be you've got to tick yes to every box before you can get through, because there are, due to the huge variety of organisations that we support, there are variations, and so, you know, we look into the options when they say.
Brilliant, thank you. Any other questions?
Hi, I wondered if I could ask a question. Sorry, I can't find the hand thing. I'm not used to Zoom at all. Sorry, apologies. I'm used to Teams now. Not very flexible, clearly. What was my question going to be? It was something about, so I work for Natural England, so I've worked a little bit on the GSP toolkit and supported 2 of the pilot projects in the East Midlands. So I think it obviously the whole accreditation and quality assurance is really important, especially for things like commissioning. I just wonder, because there's a big range in types of organisation that might be offering this kind of activity, from really tiny to much larger, more established. Is there any chance of any levels of accreditation? You know, like this is the full one, and this is, you know, a sort of standard basic level that's safe to operate. You know, is there any flexibility with that? Does that make sense?
Yes, at the moment we've just got this level of the Green Care Quality Mark, but one of the things that Sophie and I have been discussing is, again, when you've got a much smaller organisation, you know, and even where you may not have the whole of the place is set for a specific use. So like Sophie was mentioning, you might have a garden that for majority of the time it's just open to the public to come and do that. That, you know, at the moment our accreditation doesn't cover that circumstances, but what we're looking at is to try and get some funding to develop it so that we can have, if you like, modules, or I don't know if we do, you know, 1, 2 or 3 star sort of thing, so that we can say, right, so you're operating, we know you've got a safe site in the fact of the legislation, the safeguarding and the basic health and safety, then you can get the base level and then price supplementary ones. So it's definitely something we're looking at in developing as we move forward. As I said, this was launched last year. I think they were hoping that the platform it's on we would be staying with, but it's not robust enough. So that slightly delayed the development of different areas of it because we've got to move it onto a different platform. But then we definitely are looking at trying to make it even more accessible and different levels.
Lovely, that's great. Sorry, can I ask one more question as well? I thought about fees. Obviously, it sounds like it's likely to increase to about 200, you said. Is that a yearly fee that needs repaying each year?
It is at the moment, yes. So at the moment, it's an annual cost. We've been looking at other pricing modules for other accreditations, and we had noticed that some of them have got a much higher unit cost, but it covers a number of years, if you see what I mean. So that's one of the things we're currently still looking at. But what we're trying to encourage people to do is to think about funding bids as they go forward, and try and include Green Care Quality Mark, gaining the quality mark and continuing the quality mark as a part of other funding bids that they're put in, so that it can be sort of tagged on. It's be a very good thing and an easy thing to then show compliance with it in your end of funding reports and that you have to do, and so that thinking ahead and making sure that you can sort of put this in as part of gaining it in the first place. I had a look on some of the community funding sites, community foundation boards, and I was speaking to one of the areas, I think it was in Hertfordshire, so it's slightly different area, but you might have similar things up north, that they were doing workforce development funds. And I talked to them about trying to get some money to get a number of organisations through. And they said they wouldn't fund us directly as the network, but they would consider funding for the sort of workforce development to gain the Green Care Quality Mark, because what it meant is the person who was going through it was making sure that they were very au fait with their organisation's policies. They were making sure that they was developing it in the safeguarding and things like that. So they were funds that were about between £250 and £500. So that was paying for getting the quality mark and then paying for the person's time to get all that information together and submit it. So that's what we're trying to encourage people to do. You know, on our website, on our members area, there's often a lot of information that can support, you know, why Green Care, why these things are important, that members can use. And what we're saying is think ahead when you're putting these sums, you know, if you're especially doing big bids, you know, £200 and some staff time isn't, you know, may not be a big part of it, but it might mean that you can show the funding organisation that you are compliant and that it's an easier thing at the end to show.
Thank you.
I've got a question. I was just thinking, when you mentioned the peer assessors, just out of interest, how are they, you know, chosen for the role, or have they been involved in social farms and gardens for quite some time? Or
yeah, the group that we've got at the moment, they are all in either currently in care farming or have been in care farming for some time. We've got some from education backgrounds as well. What we are looking at when we're trying to develop this is to try and expand the number of peer assessors we've got, and especially to get some more from the more horticultural background, because as I said, there is an emphasis on care farming because they are the group that previously did the code of practice, which was care farming. So one of the things that we're looking at to do later in the year is to try and expand the knowledge that is within that group, and especially look at those from different backgrounds, so that we are covering the sort of range of groups that we've got around.
Mm-hmm. No, it's definitely interesting. And then if people would be interested in the, you know, in from a horticulture side with the getting involved with the assessing, how would they?
Yeah, in the first instance, you know, flag their names with myself, and when we've got this details of what's required to be an assessor, a bit more formalised, then we'll be looking into that. But we certainly are interested in, as I said, gaining that wider breadth of knowledge.
Mm-hmm. No, it's definitely interesting. And another question, it might be a bit premature, I think, because obviously we've just had you were saying that they've just released the new green social prescribing toolkit, but do you think there's any potential in the future to sort of more formalize in a bit more, you know, a bit more of a way, the relationship between yourselves and green social prescribing or the NHS, or do you think it will be something that kind of just develops naturally?
I think we've got what's called the Green Care Coalition, which is a network of organisations, and Social Farms and Gardens are part of that coalition, and that coalition is a wider breadth of organisations that are all coming at green care from different areas, and the social prescribers are in that group as well. And I think what they will be saying at the moment is that the funding has been very much to get the network in place, and get the social prescribers in place, but at some stage it's then a case of when the money is coming down, how is it being distributed? So what we're trying to do is promote through that group. And I know the Green Care Coalition are looking to, they've got a website at the moment, but they're looking at developing it at the moment and going to relaunch. And with those ones is building up that network, because I think it is about getting these things out and known, so they become the area that people look to make sure that they've ticked that box. What we're also looking at is trying to work in partnership with a number of other schemes, so that we're partner with some other accreditation schemes, so that once somebody has got the Green Care Quality Mark, they can use that as evidence for another portion of another accreditation. So because there is so much overlap in the different areas, about, you know, we focus on one area, but, you know, if you're doing learning or things like that, there are a whole area on education that we don't cover. But if you've already got your Green Care Quality Mark, it will mean that you already qualify for the majority of another accreditation. So that's where we're trying to work in conjunction with a number of other organisations.
Yeah, I think that's really important, because as you say, there is so much crossover, and we want to make it as easy as possible for people to get these accreditations and prove that what they're doing is you know, of a high standard and safe and can be prescribed to. Because I guess that's certainly what we found in our conversations that we've had with people throughout developing the Northern Network, is people are always ready and waiting for the referrals to come in and to work with the social prescribing system, but it's the social prescribing system having that assurance that what everyone's offering is, you know, quality.
And I think a lot of the cases when the money gets there into the social prescribing pots that people can apply for, you know, if they've already got the Green Care Quality Mark, we are trying to work with trying to look with some of the integrated care boards to say, you know, this is what you should be looking for when you are looking to dish out your funding. So, you know, it's about getting the organisations prepared, so then when the funding is more freely available, they're in a position to get ahead on these funding bids and, you know what's going to be required of them.
Definitely, that's a really good point as well, about linking in with your local you know, integrated care board, and knowing who those people are and who you can talk to about that. It's been, yeah, very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, looking, you know, yesterday I was looking around at most of the different integrated care boards, and it's finding out what the local priorities are and really tapping into and using their terminology, you know, tapping into finding what their priorities are and making sure that you are highlighting where you tick those boxes. So
definitely. Does anyone else have any more questions or anything like that before we finish with this section of the recording, at least? No, it doesn't seem like it. Well, thank you very much, Denise, for that overview. If people do want to, you know, if they want to get involved, do you want to put your contact details in the chat, or I can send them on so people can directly email you? Or
yeah, I did have, if I just share my screen again just slightly. There we go. There's our contact details and our website information. So yeah, email me on qualitymark@farmgarden.org.uk. And then there's the links to our website, and the second one, the SFG Quality Mark, that's the website that actually hosts the Quality Mark, but you get to it via the Social Farm and Gardens Quality Mark page.
Brilliant. Thanks, Denise. Thank you everyone for attending. I'm just going to stop the recording now.